para ayudarles y guiarles en lo que necesiten de la escuela y lo académico. ¿Tendrán unas preguntas que podemos contestar?
¿El programa es para todos los padres independientemente del distrito?
Quizás una pregunta. ¿Sí?
¿De qué edades pueden
Son de preescolar hasta secundaria. Sí. ¿Sí? Antemano sería mejor para que estemos preparadas de cuántos van a venir para preparar lo que necesitamos. Con nosotros después de aquí nos puede dar su información y le mandamos un correo electrónico.
Sino que tiene que ser una continuidad en el hogar, que quiere decir que el hogar tiene que ser reestructurado para que sea conducible para la educación del hijo en el hogar. Así para cuando vayan los sábados a Semilla, entonces los hijos ya van a estar un poquito más preparados, mejor preparados.
For kids in middle school, and what ended up happening was that now that I was working in a classroom across the district, I saw the exact same thing that really bothered me in my own school. Kids that didn't speak English were relegated to the lowest level classes available in math. And I just thought, you know, I can't do this. I can't do this. And so then I decided that I was going to apply for a doctorate and just kind of think about policy and changing policy. And so I applied to Harvard and a second time and a bunch of other schools. And again, they sent me the big envelope. And so I went to Harvard, and my PhD is in examining the relationship between language, English proficiency, and course taking patterns in math. And so this is kind of where I come from, and it's an introduction to this presentation.
And say, I'm using this sentence starter to see if they're using however. Let me listen into their group discussions. Are they using it? And if they're not using however, are they using something else that accomplishes the exact same thing? And is that okay? Right? Yeah.
Is there a specific term that addresses the cognates that are more of the academic terms?
That's a good question.
You said there's like almost like a subclass of cognates. Is there a term that refers to that?
There isn't right now. We've been using the term just imbalance, frequency imbalance cognates. Sort of describing, it's just sort of how frequently these terms get used. So the word castigate, for example, in English is very rare. You probably don't hear it as often, but you would hear reprimand or getting in trouble probably is more of a high frequency type of term that you would use. So castigate is probably, if you're going to run into that word, it's likely to be in print. And so it's less frequent than, obviously, than it's in talk. Are going to be helpful, some of them are not, because even though they're cognates, they're probably going to be equally inaccessible to students in Spanish as in English. But then there's this additional subset that does have this everydayness to it.
Is there a way we can get a copy?
Certainly, if you send me an email, I can send you a link to that site. Also, there's a great resource at the University of Colorado at Boulder. Colorín Colorado, thank you. It's a website that actually has lists of cognates.
Yes, are you out there? Okay, so you're, okay.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
You have to find victories for them. And I think this is sort of the cognates.
So I'm sure we'll run into each other, and we should also say
Yes, and hit action.
Go ahead. All right. I'm Greer Alford.
I'm Julie Harrison.
And we're both from
Shepherd Middle School in the Alum School District.
Thank you so much for having this. We really need more space for Latino kids to see positive representation and know that they can be college bound.
And thanks for hosting this great event. It's wonderful. Yeah, I'll do that. Hey, we're repping.
Okay, hi, Jennifer Doherty from Shepherd Middle School. And my comment, it's a great session to offer to teachers. I wish more teachers could be here. And it's great that the administrators and leaders of our valley in education are listening to our teachers.
Preschool. And so you can share codes in between, because on the refinement days, everybody gets released. All the first grade teachers from all the schools get released, and then they work together, which has been another really good benefit, because then even at the early grades started after just a year, we saw some growth. And well, you know, it's always hard to signal one thing as the factor. We didn't see that consistency. Right?
You didn't see any growth, yeah,
we didn't see very little consistency in movement too. And so, and it was very.
And they were second. Yes, that's okay. Yes, they are. It is a second. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Suzanne Haar. I'm from Hubbard Elementary. I am a TK teacher in Alum Rock School District.
You know, is it policy or practice? I don't know the answer to that. I mean, is state law require this structure? Or has it just been 150 years of practice? Because we're talking about acquiring and retaining new teachers. If you're a young, excited, passionate, motivated teacher, and you get there and immediately you love the kids, you love what you're doing in class, but the other side is totally structured, you can get frustrated, no matter how much you're getting paid, right? So I guess that's a rhetorical question. Is it practice or policy? I don't know the answer to that.
Cheryl, I guess just something to add to that, and definitely your comment. I think that one of the things with a lot of the changes going on in some of the schools now with the small learning communities, with the teacher teams, that's where you see a lot of teachers getting an opportunity to start being leaders within their small team, within their small group, for at least at the high school level. The professional learning communities that are starting to be built, there's usually somebody that has to take the lead in there. It gives them a connection. It gives them other people to be accountable for, and to feel like they're not isolated in the schools for 200 years. Why can't, you know, why, it's obviously not working anymore for our students and for our teachers as well. So how do we make it better for them?
In the classroom.
So one of the things that the other group brought up is just the profession, as you know, the teaching profession doesn't get the same accolades, the same sort of respect that other professions get, right? And so, that's a noble thing, but not necessarily seen as something of high importance. And so how do we start to change that, right? When we go to career days, we put on career days for the kids at the schools. We have the attorneys and the lawyers and the police officer, and yet we don't have a teacher. We take those things for granted, and we don't make it a career option for students to see themselves in those roles.
Not, but you know, we try and attract people from all over the country, and everybody wants to come here and work and live, but are there any efforts being made here in the Valley to support housing, affordable housing for teachers? That's a critical issue, and it's going to take many forces to come together to address it. Not just public entities, but private entities and corporations and universities and colleges. What efforts are being made, you know, with the government, with the companies, to address this issue?
Well, I think it's compounded not just for our workforce, but even our students, our families. So most districts, as you look around Santa Clara County, are in declining enrollment, and one of the biggest factors is because of housing.
That tied to your comment about how do we encourage, you know, our high school students to consider it as a profession. sometimes I worry about my first generation college students, who I know are taking on an enormous debt burden to go to college, and then to suggest my profession, which I love, when I know that it has been a struggle for me to pay off my student loans as a first generation college student, that I have postponed having a family because of my career choice. And so, you know, sometimes I want to be real with my students before I send them off into the world, you know?
So I know that we have had some attempts. You know, there are some districts who have toyed with the idea. It's a very complicated matter, right? I know that as superintendents, that's one of the things that we face daily, right? When somebody says, yes, I'm gonna sign up, or no, I'm not gonna sign, or I'm gonna leave after the first year because it's too expensive, right? So I think that it requires more than just a business model. When Eddie was talking about policy or practice, right? I think that a lot of this is gonna have to be policy, right? Because the practice follows. And we have followed a very outdated model, right? I think that there are some pieces, right? That the time has come, right, out of necessity, that we really need to look at a significant difference in the way we deal with our teaching profession and our education, right? We're sustaining a democracy. That's what education does, right? This is the essence of what our country is all about, right? And yet, we have not taken care financially, right? And I keep saying, I'm totally with you, right? Because this is all about, you know, a market economy also, right?
So in the sense of community, they start doing that, okay? On their own, providing that space is very important for us to do. But then also just understanding that once you have them there, you're gonna have to find ways to keep them there because they're gonna be knocking on your door and giving more, okay? And just the emotional connection, again, and then multiple incentives. A lot of our families have gone through so many challenges that they will survive on whatever next challenge comes. There were so many other groups, right? So that's what we're doing.
Yes. So I just want to more or less build on what my colleague just mentioned, right? And I just want to give you just a really quick example of another way that it's happened, right? And I think the theme of a lot of what she's been highlighting is that it's about the spaces that you create. When you create welcoming spaces, right, and it's centered around what parents need, right, about what their concerns are, about what their worries are, you get this engagement, you get this participation, because it's around things that are interesting to them, right? It doesn't mean that you can't then talk about school policies, school rules. You can, but I think the beautiful thing is when you can weave them into the kinds of things that you're already doing, versus simply saying, I want you here so that this is what you need to know, right? And I think that's a critical distinction between it. And I just really wanted to talk about some of the retreats that I've helped facilitate with one of my colegas, Raul Moreno, who's out of the Fresno area, who's done an amazing job, and I've had an opportunity, right? So we've done these migrant parent leadership retreats. And what we do is we oftentimes take parents, mostly mothers, right? But now we've also developed father retreats, right? Because you also want to create a safe space for them to talk about their particular concerns, because then it's like, you know, their inhibitions really go up, right? So then, really, a lot of this is about how do we create icebreakers, how do we do team building activities so that we get to know each other. Like icebreakers about learning each other's names, where you're from, because what we find is that a lot of times parents are from the same communities. They may see each other at schools, right, but they never communicate. And this becomes a critical opportunity for them to talk about, because at the end of the day, when it's about addressing community problems, you're not going to solve them unless you're working together in a collaborative fashion, right? Again, it goes back to the assessments. What are the needs? What are the concerns? What are their worries? And we treat them as intellectuals, as people who have the capacity to think. And what you have is some deep thinking when you believe in it.
Where our students get to actually take classes, like college classes at a community college, and receive credit for them, so that when they go to college, what was that? No, we have that professor come to our campus to teach the class there. Yeah.